This is one of the most chilling crime cases we've ever covered. The descent of a man whose life seemed shaped by cruelty and who in turn unleashed cruelty on others in ways so twisted, it feels almost inhuman. He was not the shadowy stranger who hunted silently in the night, but a man who lived in plain sight, a father, a husband, a neighbor, and a man whose chosen profession carried no trace of the blood that would later stain his hands. He was a shoemaker by trade, a craftsman who worked quietly in his Philadelphia shop, but what he became away from that workbench would horrify the world.
Welcome to CrimeScope USA. Before we get into the video, do smash that like and subscribe button to help the channel. Also, don't forget to ring that notification bell so as not to miss any new videos from us.
The story begins not with murder, but with years of violence hidden behind the closed doors of his home. Adopted as a child, he grew up in a household where brutality was routine. That legacy of pain festered, and when he became a father himself, he turned that same sadism onto his own children. He beat them, locked them in closets, forced them to kneel on broken glass. To him, control and humiliation were as natural as breathing, and he carried out punishments with the precision of a man who believed he was molding them through terror.
It wasn't long before the line between domestic torture and public violence began to blur. He grew obsessed with ideas of destiny and domination, claiming at one point that God himself had chosen him, called him to a purpose, to cleanse and to punish. His warped beliefs fused together with his twisted compulsions, and in the early 1970s, his crimes escalated into something the world could not digest. By the mid-1970s, he had grown paranoid and delusional, claiming that God, again, was commanding him to commit acts of violence. What followed was a series of crimes so chilling that even hardened detectives later described them as among the most sadistic they had ever seen. Kallinger, accompanied by his own son, Michael, began a spree of home invasions that shocked Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Together, father and son targeted families at random, breaking into their homes and turning ordinary evenings into a nightmare. When Kallinger and his son forced their way in, the terror unfolded with precision. He carried knives and a handgun, immediately establishing his dominance by threatening to kill everyone inside. Then he ordered his victims to strip naked, humiliating them in front of their loved ones. He forced fathers, mothers, and children to crawl on their hands and knees, sometimes barking orders, as if they were animals. At knife point, he bound them with rope and cloth, gagging them so their cries for help were muffled into silence. He delighted in the power he held, moving through the rooms of these homes like a director orchestrating scenes of humiliation and despair. Families who had been sitting down to dinner or watching television together suddenly found themselves at the mercy of a man who seemed to enjoy prolonging their fear more than anything else. Kallinger wasn't just violent, he was sadistic. Survivors later recounted how he would taunt them, make them believe he might let them live, then double back with renewed threats. Some were forced to perform degrading acts, to beg and plead, to endure hours of psychological torment before the ordeal ended. He treated human suffering like a game, feeding off the terror in his victims' eyes. In several homes, he sexually assaulted victims while his son stood by, complicit in his father's madness, forced into the role of accomplice and assistant.
Then the killing began. Before this point, it was clear that Joseph Kallinger suffered from severe schizophrenic delusions, claiming that God had commanded him to kill at least 3 million people. He began with his own son, Joseph Kallinger Jr. In July 1974, Joseph Jr. was found dead in an abandoned construction building, just 2 weeks after Joseph Sr. had taken out a large life insurance policy on his children. Kallinger claimed that his son had run away from home, but the insurance company, suspecting foul play, refused to pay the claim. Anger and delusion fueled him further, and he went on a violent rampage. This drew the attention of authorities, who began investigating his involvement not only in his son's death, but also in the disappearances of numerous other people in the area. His campaign of terror escalated the following year. During one of their home invasions, Kallinger and his teenage son entered the home of a family in Leonia, New Jersey. Inside were several adults and children, all of whom he bound, humiliated, and terrorized. One victim, a 10-year-old boy named Joseph Kushner, would not survive. Kallinger focused on him, forcing the family to watch as he dragged the boy aside. In a moment that remains horrifying to this day, he inflicted unimaginable acts that led to the boy's death, cementing Kallinger's reputation as a sadist willing to cross any line to satisfy his dark urges. Kallinger's spree led to the kidnap and disappearance of at least 4 individuals, including his own son, Joseph Jr., leaving a trail of terror that would haunt the community for decades. The reign of fear could not last forever. In the aftermath of these murders, police began connecting the string of bizarre home invasions and unexplained deaths. Survivors came forward with descriptions of the perpetrators, physical evidence mounted, and investigators eventually triangulated the crimes to Kallinger and his son. When he was finally arrested, the interrogation revealed not remorse, but a chilling lack of humanity.
Yes, I did.
Why did you do that?
He was a sacrifice. I was to murder 3 million people on planet Earth. And he was a sacrifice to see if I could murder one of my own. At the end of murdering all the people on Earth, I was going to murder my own family and then take my own life and become God.
What do you think of the death penalty?
I'm opposed to it.
The state has no right to take your life, but you can murder other people?
I don't think anyone has the right to take a life.
Except you?
When I'm under hallucination, I do.
These voices from God, these hallucinations, do you still experience them?
Yes, I do.
Kallinger insisted that he was acting under divine command, that he had been chosen to carry out God's punishment. He described the humiliations and torture with an unsettling calm, as though recounting ordinary errands, detached from the suffering he had caused, lost in a world where cruelty and murder were justified by delusion.
Joseph Kallinger was convicted of murder, kidnapping, burglary, robbery, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to life in prison plus additional years, ensuring he would never again see freedom. His son Michael, deemed a manipulated accomplice, was placed in a reformatory until adulthood. But the question lingered: was Kallinger truly insane, acting under delusions, or was this just a convenient excuse for a man who reveled in power and humiliation? Psychiatric evaluations diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia, yet prosecutors argued that his choices showed a man who understood exactly what he was doing. Kallinger spent the rest of his life behind bars, where his mental health continued to deteriorate. He was eventually transferred to a state hospital for the criminally insane. In 1996, he died of heart failure at the age of 59. But for the families he destroyed, and for those who lived through his reign of terror, his death was no closure. So now the question falls to you. Was Joseph Kallinger driven by madness, a mind broken by years of abuse and delusion? Or was he simply evil, a man who chose to revel in the suffering of others? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to CrimeScope USA for more chilling deep dives into true crime's darkest corners.